Hi everyone, this is Rachel Nolan for Mod 17 for AEP 858. I was asked to create a data-driven discussion protocol that I could give to teachers when I'm a building principal. And so I was thinking as a teacher myself, what kinds of data would be most useful to me in my classroom and in my everyday practice, and what kind of protocol would I want to look at and to drive my discussion with my teaching team. So I created two different things. This is the note catcher, if you will, for teachers to look at and record their data. And then I also made this worksheet, which would be for students to disaggregate their data into learning targets on a common assessment so that teachers could be looking at not just how students did on a test, but how students did on individual learning targets, because I think that can be more valuable for teachers. And so starting with this discussion protocol, I started with what do we want students to know? And this is kind of based off of the common PLC questions that my school uses, and I know a lot of schools use. What do we want students to know? How will we know that they learned it? What do we do if they didn't learn it? And what do we do if they did? And so I modified it a little bit to fit this assignment better, but definitely still started with what do we want students to know. And so teachers could list learning targets for common assessments below, and they could add more boxes if they needed or add on. I don't think most common assessments are going to have more than 3 or 4 big learning targets, especially if we break it into more of an overall category rather than small details. And then how will we know they've learned it? And so this is where that student input spreadsheet comes in, that students would look at their tests and break it down into what percent they got on each learning target, and then teachers could put in for each of their students what percent of their students were in each category. And so we'll go back and look at this. And so this is modified from something my PLC actually uses. I made a few changes to make it less specific to my school. For example, we do a relearn and a retest, and a few different processes because we have a advisory schedule where we can call kids in to do different things. But here you could put the unit, whatever learning targets, and then teachers could list out specific learning targets of what they want students to know. And so in my class, right now we're learning about the atmosphere and ocean circulation. And so one of my learning targets is that students understand the concept of density and how it relates to air and water circulation. And then here we could list out specific things, but this would be the overall concept of density. And then this would take some pre-doing as the teachers that are giving this common assessment would figure out which questions align to that learning target. And so this is just a sample that maybe the first 20 questions apply to learning target 1 and 2 of the short answer questions. And then students can come through and circle ones they got right, X through ones they got wrong, put how many points they got for short answer, figure out their total for that learning target, and then what percent they got. And then they could circle their achievement level. And then you could add on as many learning targets as you need and change this around. And then students could see, okay, I'm distinguished in this category, but I have some relearning to do for learning target 2. And then this would be whatever relearn process the teachers decide, they could have a section for a signature on the student's sheet that they completed that relearn process. So going back here, teachers could put in for each learning target what percentage of their students was in each category. And then what do we need to know? So I added in some questions to drive teacher discussion, like what do we know about our students who aren't meeting expectations? Are they from a specific group? Are they all in a certain math class? What do we know about them? So this is kind of open-ended and could be tailored to more specifics if we needed. How does your classroom data compare to other teachers? And so this isn't meant to make it a competition. It's meant to say, okay, my students were really good at learning target 1, but maybe not good at learning target 2 compared to other classes, etc. What is unique about your student population? So maybe the student or the teacher is co-teaching a class and has a lot of special ed students in there. That would definitely be something that was included here. So any thoughts and findings here? And this might open up something where teachers do a lot more um, fact searching and looking at map data and other kinds of data to find out more about their students. And then finally, what will we do if they didn't learn it? So this is a place where teachers can again talk with each other. What did other teachers do that worked on certain learning targets? How can we reteach those learning targets to struggling students? If there is a relearn assignment, what can be on it? And then, of course, what would we do differently next year? And so my thoughts with all of this is using data, classroom data, to drive instruction, specifically classroom instruction, and not just for next year, but for this year. What can we do to make sure those kids don't fall through the cracks on specific learning targets? And so I think with this sort of thing, it could be tailored pretty easily to different things. We could even take out the learning target section and put in map data from year to year, or um, different, like we use the CMAS here in Colorado, so it could be based on state assessments. And same thing, what do we know about our students? How do we take this data and use it how we need to? And then finally, I think teachers would react pretty well to this because, at least in my experience, this has taken a lot of work off the teachers and put it on the students of figuring out um, how they are doing specifically. And then for the teachers, we're just looking at data and figuring out what to do with it and not spending as much time collecting data. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation about my data-driven discussion protocol.